Howdy folks, Darren Fonzseau here talking about workers' compensation, or L&I as we call it here in the state of Washington. What I'm talking about today is how we have these injured workers groups that claim to be fighting for injured workers that only want to fight for injured workers on a state level. They don't want to fight for our federal oversight and intently tell us that they can't and they fear doing so. That is egregious at this point. In this stage of the game, when we have been told for 5 years now the injured workers of America need some minimum federal oversight on the table to stop this class war that's being waged upon us through broken state work comp laws. The group today I'm going to be talking about is Washington State's Reform L&I. This group reached out to me a couple years back after the Senator Sanders came out with the letter and Patty Murray telling us we needed minimum federal oversight. This group and Dr. Arenas contacted me and befriended me even. And at one point I was willing to even invite Hector Franco over to the house to have dinner. He never did show up, by the way. And I'm glad he didn't, because he did tell me, the phone call that I had with Hector Franco, that he also represents the businessman, so that his interests might be a little different than mine. Well, yeah, your interest and your priorities seem to align with the Civic Latino Alliance, whose priorities also seem to be to tell us we can't get that federal oversight. You don't need that federal oversight. We all have different priorities. To me, it's a total betrayal at this point, because they said they were fighting for 400 injured farm workers that had been failed in the state of Washington, which I took that baton and I ran with it. And I fought for those 400 injured farm workers in the state of Washington, and calling for the needed minimum federal oversight that we need and getting their voices heard. And I did not mind that they were just going for court cases. That was fine. I said, sure, if you want to share your court cases on my Broken Workers Comp website, go ahead. You're free to do so. And so, in that regard, I was more than willing to help them. Just like I tell the Medicare for all people, you can share your shit too. But put our minimum federal oversight on the table too, and just like everyone else, they say, oh no, we can't put your minimum federal oversight on the table. No, we can't fight for that. No, we got to go for state fixes and make people chase their tails in circles for court cases that in the last 3 years, none of them have prevailed at. None of those people have prevailed in any of their court cases, and to the contrary, they have failed at it. So you've got these injured workers chasing their tails around for something and getting their hopes up for something that you are never going to be able to prevail at, because the state laws are rigged against you. And so until you have some minimum federal oversight, i.e. the need for minimum federal oversight is to unrig those state laws from being used against you. So folks that are naive and listen to the business community to tell us that this can't be done, or that we have to fear one administration over another administration. It really doesn't matter. Administrations will come and go. Presidents will come and go. Us as injured workers have needed this minimum federal oversight on the table since 1972, when my father was injured on the job around 1976, I think it was. And he had to go through 9 years of hell. Not to mention, 40 years later, some odd years later now, they harmed me for 9 years in my work comp saga. And during that process, my father-in-law, who happens to be an injured farm worker at one point in his lifetime, and also an injured at Walmart in the state of Washington here, was worked to death rather than taken care of and getting the medical treatment that you all said. He got medical treatment. The medical treatment was ascending the crime ladders at Walmart, instead of people telling him, even his primary care providers, that he should go home and get his affairs in order because he was dying. So it's egregious to me when I have gone to jail and put my life on the line, screaming for for those 400 injured farm workers that they only got reported on one time in the Seattle Times, one time. Yet I'm screaming and getting national attention from labor unions across this country that I'm trying to get the voices heard, and calling those radio stations and the Tom Hartmans and national are getting our voices heard on a national level. So it's really frustrating when I'm standing up and doing that, when that very group wants to come around and tell me, gee, Darren, we don't like your federal oversight ideal. And it's not Darren's ideal. It's the United States Congressional Nonpartisan Research Service is now telling us the facts here in 2019, the same facts that we were told back in 2015. Yet everyone has failed to fight for a needed minimum federal oversight. And everyone on the left uses the excuses that we have to fear the right. And the right uses the excuses that, well, we have to fear the socialist left. Well, nobody puts the minimum federal oversight on the table that we need. We can regulate spark plugs on a federal level so that they are treated with some consistency, but how injured workers are treated or not treated, are compensated, that we can't do with some consistency. That is egregious. This is almost 2020, when we got people eroding our grand bargain away instead of standing up and fighting for it on the federal level as is needed. And to sit around and poo-poo the others that are doing so. I can understand, okay, well, you don't maybe totally agree with it. Like I didn't totally agree with your little court cases and making people chase their tails around, but go for it. I'd love to see you win those court cases. You never do, but go for it. I mean, I'm all for sticking it, sticking it to the system if that's the way you want to go about it, but you're not accomplishing anything in 3 years. You have not prevailed in any of those court cases. And in that whole time, you have intently remained silent about our needed federal oversight, laughed at the one man calling for it and screaming for it, and now I have this Hector, I don't know, whoever it is running campaign for reform at the moment, corresponding with me and telling me, gee, Darren, we don't even listen to your rants. Well, that's really sad. Reform L&I, you might want to start listening to the work comp victims in this state. Not just the 400 injured farm workers that you're screaming about. All of us. Not a select few, but all of us campaign for reform for L&I. When you can't step up and fight for federal oversight for injured workers at this point, now I can understand you saying, well, gee, we can't deal with Sanders and oh, well, it makes him unelectable and blah, blah, blah. That excuse don't fly no more. We have a nonpartisan United States Congressional Research Service has spent federal tax dollars to give us the facts. And you cannot look at those facts without logically concluding that there is some need for some minimum federal oversight, some basic minimum federal standards like we have a minimum federal wage. And anybody claiming to be for injured workers who can't tell us that truth, as our United States Congressional Research is telling us that truth, a nonpartisan think tank that's working on the behalf of we the people, not on behalf of the business community, and a race for better work comp rates or lower work comp rates, and a race to the bottom for men and women who labor and dare to report their on-the-job injuries. I'm sorry. I call foul when you call yourself an injured workers group and an advocacy group, and you're marching with your signs, and as you're drawing all that attention to us, you're not calling for the minimum federal oversight that the United States Congress Nonpartisan Research Service has told the American injured worker we need. I call foul, and I call it a betrayal at this point, Dr. Arrhenius. You befriended me. And was it only to use me to push the court cases? Well, you had no intent. You're just no different than the Bob Fergusons who cover this shit up with silence. Or Dal Sachs, or Governor Jay Inslee. You're correct. They all do fail to tell us about the needed federal oversight, and so does Campaign to Reform L&I. And then you tell me, oh yeah, I think we do need the federal oversight, but we can never get it and it's impossible. That is bullshit. In 2009, Baca out of California, he had it on the table. And yes, we lost because it was a controlled Congress like we got now, but it won't always be a Republican-controlled Congress. And if we aren't setting people up and educating so that when we do flip it at some point, so that we can push it through, then we are failing America's injured workers. And we are distracting them with little frivolous lawsuits that get their hearts all up in anticipation for something that you guys never do prevail on in these court cases. I wish you would. I'd love to see some of you do so. But nonetheless, even if you did prevail in the court cases just in Washington State, that doesn't help the injured workers in California. That doesn't help the injured farm workers in California either. And it doesn't help any of them across our nation, in Alabama, say, or Georgia. So I'm all for you doing your one little fights. And I've said, welcome to my page. Yeah. I'll let you help you get your voices heard on your issue that you want to be addressed, and on the state issue, basically, if you would help me get my voice heard with the need for federal oversight. Instead, what I'm hearing from the Hector Franco, who seems to be running the L&I reform group, that he don't want to even hear my rants. And some of my rants have been really good lately, and some of them have been really focused, and some of them have been me vocalizing with radio show hosts on a national level, trying to get the needed federal oversight on the table so people will address it. Not sit around and say, oh, gee, it can't happen, we can't do it. This fear card, like I say, from either side, the right or the left, no longer flies. So anyone who is saying they are for injured workers, who are not standing up and who only fight for a state fix without fighting for a federal fix, is leading us all astray as far as I'm concerned. State fixes is what have failed us now for the last 50 years since 1972. That's how long injured workers in America have been crying out and calling for this minimum federal oversight that apparently Reform L&I from the state of Washington has no intent of fighting for. I'm sorry. You got to call foul and call them out when they fail to fight for our injured workers needed federal oversight. It's not right. And it's a betrayal as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Arrhenius. And I don't know if he's behind this or if it's Hector Franco. But nonetheless, when you tell us, oh yeah, help us with our court cases, help us get our voices heard, but you tell me you don't want my voices heard and you don't even listen to it, Hector Franco? Because you don't want to hear the rants of another one of the victims? A victim that actually prevailed. I'm one of the only ones that's got a pension, and none of you even seem to win any of your battles. That's why it's egregious at this point, and it seems like people just leading other people astray for something that it's basically unobtainable. As you tell me, my federal oversight's unattainable. I disagree. It's not obtainable if people don't get honest about it and educate the general public that it needs to be addressed. When you remain silent about it, as you are, and you say, well, I'm only going to fight for a state fix, while I remain silent about the needed federal oversight, then you're not educating the general public on what needs to be done. I call foul and I call betrayal on Reform L&I. I broke my back, basically, to stand up and fight for the 400 injured farm workers you told us needed help. And this is how you pay me back. I call that a betrayal. Have a good day.